afternoon, one and all. In the connection of this webinar series, today we have with us the stalwart Sri Prasad Sanyal sir. He is the Chief Content Officer at Hindustan Times Digital Streams. And today we have webinar topic, the ever evolving space of digital news media, opportunities and challenges. So we welcome to you Sri Prasad Sanyal Saab on behalf of the Parul University, on behalf of the Parul University management, on behalf of the Parul University President sir, Vice Chancellor sir and Registrar sir. And sir, please enlighten to us, enlighten to our participants. Those are the connect with us on with the different part of the country. And please also enlighten to our students on today's webinar topic. It's the burning topic, and it will be useful for the each and every student. But before that, now I over to our assistant professor, Mr. Achalendra Katiyar sir, for your detailed introduction. So please, Achalendra Katiyar sir, please introduce to our esteemed guest and today's chief guest and speaker of today's webinar. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir, and welcome, Prasad sir, and I am welcome to all. And it's my pleasure that I am introducing to Prasad sir here. And right now he is heading a huge responsibility in Hindustan Times Group as a chief content officer, and he has a vast experience. He has two vast experience in digital domain. He started his career as a reporter from ANI, and after that he covered a long journey with CNN IBN. After that NDTV, NewsX, NDTV and after that NDTV and again NDTV, and sometimes he spent with Times of India Group, and after that he was a group editor of G Media Corporation Limited, and right now he is heading the responsibility of Chief Content Officer. He has a vast experience about website packaging and management, managed newsroom and resources, planning and coordinating big news days coverage, tracking news, monitoring competition, news stories, original content of the website, and many other responsibility ideate the headlines, original content and displays. And he has a vast understanding about new age technology and about new age newsroom as well. So it's my pleasure again, and welcome, sir. Please please give your speech about ever evolving space of digital news media and challenges and opportunities. And we are all facing COVID times, and as per reports we read about that in this period we have huge consumptions of digital news. So please, sir, please begin your address, sir. Yes, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for your very kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Look, I will begin with some very preliminary comments, which I think will set the tone for today's topic. It's a very vast topic, and we can look at it in a lot of ways. But I will try and connect the sort of burning issues and trends in the digital news space. And I think that will be very useful from the perspective of understanding digital journalism and the landscape that we exist in, not just in India, but also from a global ecosystem perspective. First of all, let me begin with India. I know that all journalism students have been taught about the inverted pyramid, but let me begin with a case study. Let me begin with India. I think, look, India is a mobile first market. Over my last three companies, I have realized that about 70% of the people, and in some cases it could be as high as 90-95%, identify with their smartphones as their main device for online news. And about half of those people are actually use only mobile devices for accessing online news, which basically means that while you would use your other digital devices to work or do other things, news consumption is limited in India in a lot of ways on a handheld device. These figures are remarkably high, and even in comparison to other developing markets like South Africa or Brazil or Turkey, these figures are high, right? Um, then India, again, is a very platform dominated market. Most of the people rely on search, and when I say search, Google is the behemoth, right? So about a third of the people would rely on search and various kinds of social media as their primary source of news information, which means that between social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Google search, you have about 60% of the market covered. Only 18 to 20% of people who consume news online go to direct online platforms like Hindustan Times or Times of India, right? Facebook and WhatsApp are particularly widely used, with about 50% of the people going to Facebook and consuming some form of news. And WhatsApp users say that 80% of the content they sort of consume is news. Whether that is news or not in the traditional sense is debatable. But the point is that 80% of the users feel that they're consuming news on WhatsApp, right? People going to Facebook and consuming some form of news. But the point is that 80% of the users feel that they're consuming news on WhatsApp, right? People going to Facebook and consuming some form of news. I'm getting some feedback. But the point is that 80% of the users feel that they're consuming news on WhatsApp. I'm getting some feedback on the. Yeah, sorry. Let's proceed. The last point I want to make in context of India is that, look, news is more diverse in this country than ever. India is not a country in that traditional sense. It is more like a continent. And the best kind of journalism very often is lost in the corners of our country, with it being actually published by various Indian language outlets. And I think very importantly, there are platforms like Daily Hunt, there are platforms like Google, which have now started working on Indian language content in a very, very big way. And we should see some of that influence flow through very easily and make that kind of journalism, very discoverable. Right. The sort of other thing which I must highlight is that, look, there is an appetite for personalized content, especially because the mobile phone is a very personal device. I use my mobile phone. 5 people do not use my mobile phone. So I want content that is tailor-made for me. There is a lot of video consumption in India, and I think that is also given the fact that a lot of videos, you can do away with some of the language biases or limitations in understanding the written word can be overcome in a video. And there is also a trend that people they have the intent of paying for content that adds value to their life, right? So these are some of the trends in India. Now, when we come to a more global context, let's understand that we have moved from a world where the media organizations, the publishers, were the gatekeepers of information, to a world where we as publishers create a news agenda, but the platform companies like Google and Facebook control the access to audiences. That is a reality, and that is a reality we cannot run away from. Then the move to digital media generally does not generate filters in individuals. Individuals keep on consistently consuming what they were consuming, maybe in a much more targeted way. Right. Then which means the digital media gives them the ability, gives us the ability to target individuals much more sharply than ever before, right? Um, the third thing is that I feel, and this is a personal opinion, that journalism is often losing uh, the battle not just of eyeballs but of people's trust, of people's attention, right? Public trust is very important, public attention is very important, and even if we do have trust, I really think that there is an attention deficit that's generated, and sometimes we lose um, out to the WhatsApp university that exists. uh, the fourth thing which we must remember, and this is true of a global context, is that the business model which fund news are under severe stress, and it is a huge challenge. Uh, Traditionally, Indian newspapers, for example, have survived on advertising. And the cost that even today we pay for a newspaper is perhaps just the distribution cost. So the distribution cost is covered by circulation revenues, and the rest is picked up by advertising. But as that model has sort of grown over the years, the space for investing in journalism has shrunk, and it also leaves any venture more open to or vulnerable to political interests or commercial interests. And fifth is that there's always the space and the need for better quality journalism, better quality information, and the digital media allows you to almost seamlessly, endlessly reach the right information and match it to the right audience. It's up to us on how we sort of execute it and how we sort of maintain professional journalistic standards. So, Ashlendra, with that, I would sort of end my opening remarks, and we can maybe move to a Q&A session.
So, sir, I would like to start with first question. During the pandemic, which type challenges you have as a team leader, because you are leading the whole digital newsroom and you are looking the content for the live Hindustan, Desi Martini, Hindustan Times, and Mint. And according to the media research and agencies, people are reading more and more news and related with COVID news, and also we have many fake news as well. So how you dealt with them?
So, look, during a pandemic, there's an operational challenge. All newsrooms are part of this country, part of the city we live in, and therefore a pandemic does not sort of evade journalists. So, at a personal level, I think all of us were dealing, and that happened during the first phase last year. That happened more recently, and we are still in that. We're sort of in the witnessing a declining second spurt, where each individual or each team is dealing with the COVID impact that it feels directly by team members being impacted, by families of team members being impacted, etc. And that's a sort of problem that has existed across newsrooms, right? The other thing is that how do you source news, right? During a pandemic, you can't go out. Most government departments are not functioning. Most traditional ways of delivering or news gathering had ceased to exist. So last year in April, if you would ask me this question, I said, look, we are still trying to evolve and work things out. Currently, however, like we are doing a webinar, everything has come online. I think what this pandemic has done, it's been a curse. And I can't say any pandemic is a blessing, right? It's been a curse in the sense of the enormous amount of human tragedy and loss that it has brought, enormous amount of business losses that it has brought about. But what it has done is it has made people, especially in developing countries like India, people more aware of the opportunities that exist through their devices, through their laptops, through their phones, and the enormous amount of things they can do. People who were hitherto not used to transacting on their phones learned how to transact on their phones. People who were hitherto uncomfortable ordering online learned how to order online. People who were hitherto consuming news through a newspaper in a physical form or watching a television learned how to watch and consume a lot of news on their mobiles. So already an expanding mobile market, but I think the adoption rate was accelerated. And during the pandemic also, because as a human being, I'm very curious to know about what this is, when will this subside, what is happening to me, can I get a vaccine, what is the government doing, what are the unlock norms, whatever it is, right? So in this ever-changing, ever-dynamic scenario, I think the appetite for information and news has grown. Last April, May, June, we saw that spike really high. This April, May has also, seen a spurt in certain kinds of information. But I think the anxiety around COVID as a pandemic is greater this time, because the impact has been felt more widely in India, and this has been a sharper sort of effect that we have all felt in our lives.
My second question is that you talked about news gathering, the way of news gathering, we have some problems. And because you have a collective responsibility in terms of news gathering and also newsroom. And so how you cope up with technology, and do you feel ki we have some shortage, lack of trained manpower for digital journalism? Yeah, as a media educator, what do you want to say to all of us? Which type of the skills required for the digital journalism? How we can train our the budding journalists for the digital newsrooms?
So I would specifically want to answer that question by saying, look, while the digital media space has been evolving, I think for the last 20 years, in the last 5 or 6 years in India, it has really made a rapid strides. That's not just about the publishers. It is, and you can look at a cross section of your students, and if you ask them, "Aap news kahan padhte hain?" wo bolenge in shorts. It's a standard thing. Like, people are consuming things on their phones. Smartphones have become a reality. They've become more affordable. I think in 2019 was a watershed year, because Jio walks in and gives you all this data for free for a year. And there's a huge number of Indians who lashed onto that offer and started consuming data. So we are all used to consuming 4 or 5 GB of data almost on a daily basis. And I think that is a change in the consumer mindset. That is one. News gathering typically, had the pandemic not hit, we would have still gone to a press conference. We would have still taken our reporter, the TV people would have put up their cameras, done their OBs the way they used to. What has happened now is, because this pandemic forced us to stay at home, it forced us to think out of the box. And with that, it has forced the people who want to be in the news also to think out of the box. So you will find now a lot of news which is being pushed actively to social media first by all the people who want to make news, whether it's political parties or politicians or people involved in the social sector or people involved in the education sector. You will see that a lot of the daily briefings, for example, for political parties, they are now live cast on YouTube. And all the beat journalists have that YouTube link. And because it's on YouTube, a lot of the beat journalists who may not have made it to the press conference on a daily basis are now able to track that on a daily basis. So remote working has forced us to think out of the box, has forced us to make that last mile more accessible, and also in a sense of just understanding what we can do with that very powerful 6-inch device that we all hold in our hands, right? You would see a lot of television channels actually just using their mobile phones as cameras, right? A lot of the anchors have set up green screens in their homes and have been anchoring TV shows from their homes. So there is a lot of understanding of what we could do. Actually, this could have been done even 3 years ago. But because there was no impetus to do it, I think none of us wanted to get out of our comfort zones. Now, because we have to work from our homes, now because going out has become difficult, I think it is when we've had to innovate very, very quickly. And we are still doing that. You will see that the technologies which we use to, gather news will rapidly evolve. For example, I think a broadcast camera might be very obsolete very soon. Phones might actually become better from a broadcasting perspective. You might see a lot of software being developed which make anchoring and editing on a phone better. So your phone will become a much more powerful and potent tool in, and when I say in the future, I'm saying in a 12 to 18 month phase. I'm not even thinking beyond that currently. So that's I think the perspective that I want to bring to the table today. Sorry, you aren't audible.
Yes, sir. So this is a question from student side. What is digital first approach? It's a necessary for newcomers, for new journalist. So question ये है कि वो ये चाहते हैं कि what is the exact meaning of digital first approach for the journalist? Should they focus on the digital first or print first approach in this?
डिजिटल फर्स्ट को देखने का बहुत सारा नजरिया है. सिंपली अगर उसको हम ट्रांसलेट कर दें तो उसका मतलब है आप पहले डिजिटल कीजिए. डिजिटल फर्स्ट का और कोई बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड मीनिंग नहीं है, लेकिन अब उसको कैसे देखें. इफ आई अंडरस्टैंड द क्वेश्चन करेक्टली, उसको देखना कैसे. यू शुड फोकस ऑन प्रिंट फर्स्ट या डिजिटल फर्स्ट में मेरा, आई हैव ऑलवेज बिलीव दैट, देखिए अच्छी पत्रकारिता है. आप किसी भी मीडियम में उसको करें, वो आपको पहले सीखनी चाहिए. आप जर्नलिज्म के अगर स्टूडेंट हैं, जर्नलिज्म और न्यूज फॉर एग्जांपल इज मीडियम एग्नोस्टिक. खबर होती है, आप कहीं भी पढ़ें उसको. पैकेजिंग उसकी मीडियम सेंट्रिक होती है. खबर टीवी पे करेंगे तो उसको करने का लहजा अलग होगा. खबर आप प्रिंट में लिखेंगे तो उसमें आपको लिखना पड़ेगा और उसको करने का लहजा अलग होगा. और अगर आप डिजिटल में करेंगे तो कुछ चीजें आपको ध्यान रखनी पड़ेंगी, जिसमें आप वीडियो भी बना सकते हैं, आप लिख भी सकते हैं. सो डिजिटल गिव्स यू द ability to do both, right? To do the kind of stuff you would do on television and to do the kind of stuff you would do on print. But what changes is digital में आपको ये सोचना पड़ता है constantly कि ये जो खबर मैं कर रहा हूं ये लोगों तक पहुंचेगी कैसे. टीवी में चैनल पे आपने डाल दिया, कोई आपके चैनल को देखता होगा, या चैनल का ब्रांड इतना बढ़िया है कि लोग वही चैनल खोलते हैं और उसमें वो लोग खबर देखते हैं. अखबार लोग आदतन पढ़ते हैं, और आप अपने खुद के एक्सपीरियंस से देखेंगे कि अखबार लोग चेंज नहीं करते हैं जल्दी. अब प्रोडक्ट जो आप, क्योंकि अखबार की एक आदत बन जाती है, आपको एक ही पेज पे एक ही तरह की खबर पढ़ने की आदत है रोज सुबह, तो वो आदत है. डिजिटल में क्योंकि आदमी सर्च कर रहा है और वो ही ढूंढ रहा है जो उसको चाहिए, तो वो आपको आर्टिकल ऐसे करना है कि वो उस सर्च के क्वेरी को शांत कर दे. डिजिटल में मैं कुछ सर्च कर रहा हूं, हमेशा मैं कुछ ढूंढता हुआ आया हूं, या मेरे फोन पे मैंने अगर एक ऐप डाउनलोड किया तो मैंने इस उम्मीद से डाउनलोड किया कि मैं जो दिन में 4 चीजें पढ़ना चाहता हूं वो मुझे ये ऐप बताएगा. तो उसमें अलर्ट आ रहा है कि मैं सर्च में कहीं रैंक कर रहा हूं. उसका मतलब ही यही है कि हमको ये सोचना है कि वो डिस्कवरेबिलिटी का प्रॉब्लम हम कैसे सॉल्व करेंगे. तो डिजिटल फर्स्ट होने के लिए आपको डिस्कवरेबिलिटी का प्रॉब्लम का सल्यूशन ढूंढना है, और सोचना यह है कि हम तक आदमी कैसे पहुंचेगा, क्योंकि हम आदमी तक नहीं पहुंच रहे, लोग हम तक पहुंचते हैं आकर. उल्टा है, पुश एंड पुल अलग है इसका.
Next question is that what is the difference you observed, according to you, between the print content and digital content in the story size, either in terms of writing? Is there any difference for journalists in writing matter, in writing manner, either it's the same content?
Content same hai. It is the same content. I'll tell you what the stylistic differences have to be or should be. One is the headlining. In print, you can get away with 2 or 3 words as a headline and not have any context to the headline. The headline needs to attract eyeballs in a very different way. In digital, the headline also has to cater to search. So some search metric, some keyword has to be there. Similarly, in a digital story, for example, every story generally comes with a photograph. A photograph is an important constituent of a digital story. Other photo elements like graphics or interactive elements are important constituents of a digital story, which you cannot have in a print. That is a disadvantage of that medium, right? Thirdly, there are a lot of instances where in print you have single column news or news in briefs, which are written in 40, 50, 60 words. In digital articles, more or less, we try and get to about 250 to 300 words, usually, because space isn't a constraint. You can publish as many articles as you want. And what you strive for is to publish more on a certain topic. If you have one burning issue, you want to publish as many articles on that as possible and interlink those articles so that if one person has read one article, they will read a couple of more articles on that topic. Print में normally क्या होता है, आप अगर स्पेशल पेज बना रहे हैं तो उस पूरे पेज में 10 एलिमेंट डालते हैं. हम डिजिटल में उन 10 एलिमेंट्स को सोचते हैं कि 10 आर्टिकल या 10 इसमें इंफोग्राफिक प्लस आर्टिकल, वीडियो प्लस आर्टिकल कैसे बनाया जाए. हम भी एलिमेंट ही डाल रहे हैं, लेकिन हमारे जोड़ने का तरीका अलग है. प्रिंट की तरह स्पेशल पेज नहीं बनेगा.
Okay, sir. And this is a question from international student Mohammad Jailo. Sir, this question is that my question is that what advices he have for upcoming journalists in relation to social media journalism?
Look, it's a very, very sort of controversial topic, I would say, because look, journalism, do you want to use social media as a tool of journalism? Do you want to use it as an input tool? Do you want to use it as an output tool? It depends. Is social media the source of your information as a journalist? I would be very careful against that. I would be very careful on making social media my only source of information as a journalist. Social media can alert you to something as a trend, but your sources of information, I think, still need to be more basic, more vetted. You need to be able to pick up that phone. You need to be able to talk to that person. You need to be able to meet a person in order to get relevant information and stories. So as a journalist, I think that will remain critical. Where social media plays a role is, of course, dissemination of information. You can put out your story on social media for wider reach. And there, I would say that if you put it out there for wider reach, you should put it out on as many platforms as possible. And as much work as you do on putting it out in a platform-specific context, it will work better for you. And I'll tell you what I mean by a platform-specific context. The way you put out a story on Facebook is not the way you do an Insta story. The way you put an Instagram post is not the way you tweet. So you have to be very specific to the platform. And my advice to every journalist is to say that, look, concentrate on 1 or 2 platforms. If you try concentrating on 6 platforms together, you won't be successful on any platform. And therefore, figure out what kind of platform suits your kind of journalism or what kind of platform suits your interest. It could be either which way, but choose your platform, or at least platforms, a couple of them, and go for it. I mean, just disseminate your content that you've created in the best possible manner.
Thank you, sir. And next question is that which type of the skill you required? In this pandemic, we required lots of new man force suppose a new staff, suppose you have some staff crunch, suppose you have lots of work, because lots of people are shifting towards they are approaching for the digital first news and reading more and more news. So you have any डिफिशियंसी मतलब इन टर्म्स ऑफ स्टाफ कि इस स्किल के लोग नहीं मिल रहे ऐसा एज ए इंडस्ट्री ऑब्जर्व एनी स्पेसिफिक ट्रेंड.
See, I think traditionally what we faced as a problem in a digital newsroom is that while we find people greatly learned in paths and having the necessary skills, working outside the newsroom means that each person has to do more in terms of just being technically more sound and capable, which means that as a reporter, can I set up a Zoom interview with a person and record that Zoom interview? I'll start with very basic examples. As a reporter, can I do a Zoom interview and record it? Once I know how to record it, can I put it out? Can I get an access to my corporate Facebook page and do a Facebook Live? Right? Do I have the ability to use the CMS, the content management system that your company uses or your newsroom uses, and publish directly online? Am I adept at tracking any messaging tool that you might have, right? So it could be WhatsApp, it could be Telegram, it could be any other tool that is it's corporate mandate or whatever it is. The point is, are you able to use that seamlessly to communicate remotely with your team? Are you able to track incoming information on your phone and on your laptop very easily? Or do you need a physical interface? These are the kind of challenges that I think we've all been facing. And I think a lot of the journalists have actually come up with very good solves for these also. It is not as if people haven't solved for them. It's just that the kind of challenges that they have faced is trying to sort of do 4 things together at the same time and multitasking in the very generic sense of the word. While earlier they could be very, very focused on just one task, they now have to be focused on a lot of ways of trying to get the news out there.
Yes. And sir, next question is that which type of language, about the language, in Hindi or in English, you have observed any growth, specific growth in terms of the readership habit? So suppose I want to pursue a career in Hindi domain or English. So both languages are important. Either a student can choose one language. So which type is a language is barrier in digital journalism, or we have a more opportunity in Hindi space or English space?
Okay, many ways of, there's no single way of answering this. So let me give it a shot. I really think that you should practice journalism in the language you're most comfortable in. आप जिस भाषा में पारंगत है आप उसी में अपनी पत्रकारिता भी कीजिए. तो अगर आप हिंदी बोल सकते हैं तो हिंदी बोलिए, अगर अंग्रेजी बोल सकते हैं अंग्रेजी बोलिए, और अगर बांग्ला बोल सकते हैं तो बांग्ला बोलिए, या तमिल में कीजिए या तेलुगु में कीजिए. मुझे नहीं लगता कि भाषा में कोई विवाद है. What you need to do, of course, in India is that you need to understand 1 or 2 languages very well. Ideally, if you're truly bilingual, which is a very difficult task to sort of get to, but if you're truly bilingual, if you're equally good in both languages, is where you will find a lot of success. And that could be of various combinations, right? Now, if somebody were to know Telugu and Hindi very well, that is also an opportunity. So the opportunity is in knowing multiple languages very well. And when I say very well, you have to be able to read, write, and speak those languages. You cannot just say, I speak a language, या मैं थोड़ी बहुत बोल लेता हूँ. थोड़ी बहुत बोल के नहीं होगा. आप खबर उस भाषा में देख के, पढ़ के, समझ के दूसरी भाषा में लिख पाए, तब उसका वैल्यू है। तो अगर आपको हिंदी में पत्रकारिता करनी है, बिल्कुल हिंदी में कीजिए, हिंदी में ग्रोथ का कोई अभाव नहीं है। आपको अंग्रेजी में करना है, आप अंग्रेजी में कीजिए। हिंदी में ट्रेडिशनली अखबार ज्यादा रहे हैं, आपका जो मार्केट स्पेस है वो ज्यादा है, बट इट हैज ट्रेडिशनली बीन लोअर पेइंग। डिजिटल में वैसा डिफरेंस नहीं है, ज्यादातर केसेस में डिजिटल में एट एन एंट्री लेवल वो डिफरेंस नहीं है। एट द टॉप लेवल डिजिटल में डिफरेंस कम है, लेकिन हाँ, अखबारों में पे स्केल में शायद अभी भी डिफरेंस है, विच आई एम व्हाइल आई कैन ओनली से दैट एलिजिडली डिफरेंस है, क्योंकि मैंने कभी अखबार में खुद डायरेक्टली नहीं काम करके देखा है। तो मुझे लगता है कि भाषा में आप जिस भाषा में कंफर्टेबल हो कीजिए। अपॉर्चुनिटी इंडियन भाषाओं में भी उतनी ही है, और हिंदी क्यों, आप किसी भी इंडिया में किसी भी भाषा में कर सकते हैं। अगर आप जिस भी देश से आते हैं आप उस भाषा में कीजिए। आप स्वीडिश में पत्रकारिता करना चाहते हैं और आप स्वीडन से आते हैं तो बिल्कुल कीजिए। लोग अपनी भाषा पढ़ते हैं और लोग जिस भी भाषा में पत्रकारिता करें उसी में वो सक्सेसफुल होंगे। I can't hear you again, Achlendra.
Sir, to avoid the disturbance, I switched off the mic,
Okay.
muted. So next question is that, like always, it's a common question. What do you think? Has digital replaced the print?
No, yes and no to both work. Again, very, very generic question. Look, digital hasn't replaced the print. What your phone has become is a second screen. But in many cases where people are, but new reader, right? Somebody who's, let's say, 15 may not take to a newspaper anymore. Somebody who's very urban and is a teenager might use their phone as their primary source of information. There is a whole generation, which is not millennial, but there's a whole generation that comes after that where a 2-year-old is very comfortable looking for YouTube videos on their parents' phone. That generation is not likely to pick up a newspaper. Newspapers will remain a slightly older person's go-to. But I mean, look, there are a lot of us who've grown up on newspapers, and that is something that, look, I can't replace my newspapers with a phone. I have struggled with doing that. So to that extent, I think newspapers will remain in some form or the other because it gives you a curated experience. In the morning when I pick up a newspaper, the 15, 16, 20 pages that come tell me that if you read me back to back from India news to world news to business news to sports news and entertainment, you will get all that you need to know if you read these 15 pages. That's the promise that any newspaper comes with. And that's a curated experience, right? With digital, you have to go hunting for information. The problem is, what do you hunt for? आप क्या ढूंढेंगे अगर आपको पता ही नहीं है क्या ढूंढना है? तो कहीं ना कहीं डिजिटल अभी भी सेकेंड स्क्रीन का काम करता है, लेकिन ज्यादातर लोग अब क्या होने लगा है, क्योंकि एग्रीगेटर एप्स आ गए हैं, अब ज्यादातर लोग एग्रीगेटर ऐप के न्यूज अलर्ट से अपना न्यूज जान लेते हैं, वो इंटरेस्ट के हिसाब से अपने अलर्ट सेट कर लेते हैं और वही 4 चीजें जानते हैं जो वो इंटरेस्टेड हो। अखबार में भी कोई बहुत सारे लोग जो हैं वो सारे पन्ने नहीं पढ़ डालते। मेरे बचपन में मेरे घर में अखबार के 4 टुकड़े हो जाते थे, जिसमें मैं 1 पन्ना पढ़ता था, मेरे पिताजी 4 पन्ने पढ़ते थे। तो इस तरह की अखबार पढ़ने की भी कंजम्पशन वैसी ही रही है। But what aggregator apps have done is that has become very, very sharp, and now that is being delivered on a phone. हम डिजिटल में भी क्यूरेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं. I actually try and tell my user what is it that she should read. But a lot of people actually may like the curation, may not like the curation, because the curation is done for the editor. Newspaper ultimately is a curated experience, whereas a website is a more loosely curated experience. And if you're coming through search, then you are actually bypassing that curation that the editor has put on the homepage of a website, and you're landing up on an article straight. So you've not actually used the curation, right? And that's what it is. In digital space, newsletters have come up in a big way. There are many, for example, within subscriptions, there are many subscription platforms like the Ken or the Morning Context, which are newsletter driven. Most of their traffic is driven through the newsletter. Every morning, the things I subscribe to, they send me a newsletter. I read the newsletter. If it is of interest to me, I click on the links provided in the newsletter. If it is not of interest to me, I close the newsletter and go on to reading other things. So there is an effort to curate on the digital front, but a digital audience has more ways of bypassing that curation than a print audience would. In a print newspaper, you cannot bypass the curation. Editor ने जो छपवा दिया वही छपेगा. उसके बाहर कोई खबर नहीं है. In the digital space, there is of course much more to do, and you can switch more easily.
Sir, this is my question. I want to ask. This is a question. I observed a new trend. Suppose yesterday I reading Gulf News, so I have some stories free of cost, and some for to read some stories I need subscription. And I observed this trend in Washington Post, in New York Times, Gulf News, and so many other media houses. So Hindustan Times has, either in India you have this type of the model we are going to adopt, either it will work, it's a new trend. So what do you think about that? We have in future we will have some content, non-print content.
So subscription overall is a way of trying to get the consumers to pay for news. And I'll tell you why it is important. It is important because you need to protect, like I said, if advertising is your only source of revenue, then you will have to give into corporate interests at some point. So in the interest of greater social good, I think news consumers should pay for their news. बाहर मैं जब अगर यूएसए का आप उदाहरण ले, न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स वीकडे पे $4 का मिलता है न्यूज स्टैंड से अगर आप खरीदे रिटेल पे, और $7 का वीकेंड का न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स आता है. ठीक है, विच मीन्स दैट, और अगर आप सब्सक्रिप्शन लें तो आपको महीने में उसके $50 खर्च करने पड़ते हैं. ठीक है, आज के कन्वर्शन पे रेट में महीने में 3,500 या 4,000 रुपए का वो न्यूज़पेपर है. हमारे यहाँ 400 रुपए आप महीने में न्यूज़पेपर का देते हैं कि नहीं, डाउटफुल है. कोई भी न्यूज़पेपर महीने का भी 400 रुपए का नहीं होगा. 200-250 रुपए में कोई भी एक अखबार आ ही जाता है. नाउ इंडियन कंज्यूमर इज नॉट यूज्ड टू पेइंग फॉर न्यूज. एक्चुअली न्यूज तो उसको फ्री मिल रहा है, but the problem is that the subscriber, I think, should pay for news, right? So there is a model where you say that, look, there is a news which is available with everyone, maybe I make that free, or there is news on COVID which I can give out as free news because it serves a greater motive in society. But there are specialized articles, there are particular columnists that you know are adding value of a greater order. It is not just information that they are providing, but they are providing very valuable analysis. And for that, if we have to charge the user, then I think we should be able to charge the user. So globally, there are metered subscription models where you can read a certain number of articles before you have to start paying. There are other models where certain content is free, certain category of content is free, and for other categories of content you have to pay, which is a freemium model, which is free plus premium, right? So freemium model. And then there are other meters, which is basically to say that, look, if you are a very regular customer, you can read this, or maybe you read 3, then you sign in, then you read another 3, then you pay us per article. So there are various kinds of payment modes. Hindustan Times as a group, Mint is technically a metered paywall where you can read a certain number of articles before you are asked to subscribe to it. So you can read a certain number of articles in a month for free, and then you can subscribe to it. Certain articles on the Mint site are tagged as premium, and that you can read only if you have a subscription or if you buy the subscription, right? And those are clearly called out that these are maybe out of the 200 articles that it has on any given day, maybe 20 of them are premium or 10 of them are premium. I mean, it's a very low percentage, but that is there. HT also has a certain category of articles which are exclusive, which is tagged as such, and you're asked to sign in to read those articles. We don't charge people for it. In these COVID times, we decided not to, but I think at some point we will end up doing that. But you can currently just sign in and read it. All our e-papers have become products which you have to pay for. And the rationale there is simple. If you took a newspaper at home, you would have paid something for it. You would have paid 5 rupees a day for it, let's say. So if you end up paying 700 rupees for the whole year to read an e-paper, it's very minuscule. It is less than 2 rupees a day in many cases. So you're paying something for a product which in physical form you would have otherwise paid for. So that is the logic for putting monies to an e-paper, because it's just a electronic reproduction of the newspaper.
Okay, sir, and I will conclude before 5 minutes this session, because we have alert that Prime Minister will address the nation at 5
Yes.
p.m. So it's important for you, sir. So I have 3 questions, and I want this is a question from Edelman. He is Arvind, the senior manager in Edelman PR firm. As online media is quite dynamic and very important development is become a breaking news. So what are the basics which online journalists keep in mind to validate a story?
So the basics that any journalist keeps in mind to validate a story is you validate it through multiple sources. You never trust one source. You at least do 2 more checks to see that they are carrying it. Basically, if you're getting something from social media, we look at what account we are getting it from. Is it a verified account? Is it an official handle of a ministry or a minister? Is it the official handle of a political party or an official page of some minister or government department? So on social media, the verification and the official handle list is important. Otherwise, you just verify the same news from a couple of sources, independent sources, before you put it out. Typically, you have reporters in your newsroom who can verify it, and you can also use your sources within various departments, ministries, with people, with hospitals, and you can verify that. I'll give you a typical example. In cases of death, we try and call the hospital to confirm whether that has happened or not. When we report death of an individual, even if it's a very senior person or a very important person, a VIP in that sense, we try and call up the hospital in question, even if the reporter is confirmed, to get an independent confirmation.
So now I'm calling to Dean sir. Sir, you may ask any question to Prasad sir, and we have important yes sir.
I go through the entire talk and the very nice session and question answer session, but I have 2-3 questions from my side, and I build up in one question. Sir, what is the credibility of digital media, and what is the advertisement of the market is captured by the digital media, and what kind of the technical challenges in digital media?
The technical challenges are 2, 3, 4. Technology is fast emerging, right? So basically, if you see, then technology, you have to keep up with it. And that reinventing the wheel, as it were, is a challenge in digital media, because the word digital in itself means that you have to rely on technology in a very, very big way, right? Now, the other thing is, your other questions were technological challenge, then it was advertising, right? So advertising,
yes, sir.
I would say that advertising in India, I think digital media would outstrip print media advertising maybe this year or maybe by next year. So maybe so while I tell you, I had my insight was that, look, digital advertising industry has witnessed a 15 to 16% growth last year in spite of the pandemic. And it now is at around 16,000 crores in this country, right? It is expected to grow by the end of 2022 to about 23,000 crores. So in terms of speed of growth, it is the fastest. In terms of size, it is still slightly smaller than print, but it is basically going to overtake print very soon. The total industry outlay for advertising this year is about 63,000 crores. I mean, that's the predicted size of the industry. So of that, 23,000 crores is with digital in that sense. Most of that is coming out of course, lack of outdoor advertising, which is completely died down. Some impact on radio and print as well.
And what about the credibility of digital media? Because a lot of the digital platform is coming during the COVID-19, and many people are active on that. So
credibility of
how we can
very often
credibility.
Correct. So very often the user confuses digital media with what he or she finds on WhatsApp. The problem is that digital brands in itself, Hindustan Times is a brand on print and digital aren't two different brands. It's the same brand with a very integrated newsroom with the same kind of rigor that is applied to doing all your articles. It's just that with WhatsApp, there are small content publishers or producers or even single man operations which are producing a lot of content. Now, at one level, I think all the publishers, and we are trying to get together or at individual levels, trying to myth bust, protect from fake news. There are fake news fact checkers that have emerged on Facebook platforms, on Google, independent fact checkers. So that ecosystem is slowly developing because we are now aware of how much damage fake news propagators can cause, especially in the field of politics and in cases of certain social strife, right? The problem is for each fact checker that emerges, there is one person who's trying to create very skewed and fake news as such. So look, fake news isn't news, it is misinformation. Now, tackling misinformation will remain very, very challenging, but the medium itself is not to blame for that. The medium itself is not to blame for that. The digital media has democratized the spread of information. If certain people or forces choose to use that for spreading misinformation, then the medium itself isn't poor. And the onus is on, I think, everybody to sort of also use it, their own judgment in deciding where to go to get their news content.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And over to Achalendra Katiyar.
थैंक यू सर. आखिरी में एक सवाल मैं और पूछना चाहता हूँ कि प्रसाद सर का अपना कोई ड्रीम दूसरा था. आज आप इंडस्ट्री के लीडर हैं. यू आर लीडिंग हिंदुस्तान टाइम्स एंड सो मेनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन प्रीवियस दैट. सो आप कुछ और बनना चाहते थे या जर्नलिज्म ही पहला पैशन था? सो इट्स अ पर्सनल क्वेश्चन इफ यू वांट टू रिवील विद अवर स्टूडेंट्स.
नहीं तो अब नहीं मैं देखिए एनेक्डोटली मैं बोलूंगा, मेरे एक और मैं उनका नाम नहीं लूंगा, वो बहुत बड़े पत्रकार हैं इस देश के, वो मेरे फॉर्मर बॉस भी हैं. उन्होंने एक बार मुझे समझाया था कि कोई भी पत्रकार वो फेल्ड कुछ और है. तो मैंने उनसे पूछा कि ये बहुत गड़बड़ लग रहा है, ये कुछ चीज में फेल होकर आदमी पत्रकार बनने आएगा, ये तो मुझे समझ में नहीं आया. बोले नहीं, उनकी मंशा कुछ और होती है. पत्रकारिता कोई बच्चे से, आप 6 साल के बच्चे से पूछो कि जर्नलिस्ट बनोगे, तो उसके घर में अगर कोई नहीं होगा तो वो खट से जर्नलिस्ट नहीं बोलेगा, क्योंकि दिखता नहीं है कोई जर्नलिस्ट. It somehow has always remained with me. I think that is to an extent correct, very limited, but to an extent correct. Again, nobody in my family has a background in journalism, and I have no journalist role models, etc. growing up. I think journalism for me happened quite by accident, because I happened to land up after college, and in college I studied political science, history and economics. तो उस combination में either आदमी academics में रह जाता, या पत्रकारिता कर ले, या सिविल सर्विसेज में ट्राई करे. अब उस कॉम्बिनेशन का यही 3 बन सकता है। पॉलिटिकल साइंस, हिस्ट्री और इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ के आप डॉक्टर इंजीनियर तो बनेंगे नहीं। तो अब उसके बाद कॉलेज के बाद जो ऑप्शंस थे उसमें जर्नलिज्म समझ में भी आया, और मेरा एक एडमिशन इधर एक इंस्टीट्यूट में हो गया। वो सबने कहा कि भाई देश का बहुत बड़ा इंस्टीट्यूट है, सरकारी इंस्टीट्यूट है, उसमें जाइए और पढ़िए। अब पढ़ने के बाद इंटर्नशिप किया। इंटर्नशिप तक मुझे कोई जर्नलिज्म करने का शौक है ऐसा भी नहीं था, लेकिन चूंकि आपने पढ़ लिया और आपको इंटर्नशिप करना है क्योंकि वो सर्टिफिकेट आपको चाहिए, तो आपने इंटर्नशिप करते करते मुझे लगा कि ये काम कुछ समझ में भी आ रहा है, इसमें मेरी सिर्फ रुचि नहीं है, ये काम मैं कर सकता हूँ। ये काम, इसमें मेरा थोड़ा बहुत, उसको आप टैलेंट कह लीजिए या एप्टीट्यूड कह लीजिए, वो है। तो मैंने वो काम करना फिर शुरू किया, और एक बार आप शुरू कर लेते हैं और न्यूज रूम में रह जाते हैं, और मैं सबको कहता हूं कि 1 साल 2 साल आप किसी न्यूज रूम में टिक जाए, तो उसके बाद 5-6 साल बाद आपको कभी लगेगा कि मुझे न्यूज रूम से निकलना है, तो वो हो सकता है। लेकिन न्यूज रूम की एक एडिक्टिवनेस है, और उसमें अगर आप टिक जाए तो आप उस निकल के भी उस इकोसिस्टम में आप रह जाते हैं। आप जर्नलिज्म में, वंस यू आर अ जर्नलिस्ट, यू स्टे इन दैट इकोसिस्टम, योर कॉन्टैक्ट्स रिमेन, योर फोन बुक रिमेन्स। और अब तो फोन बुक की भी अलग से जरूरत नहीं है, आपके फोन पे वो सारे नंबर रहते हैं। तो आप उस इकोसिस्टम में एक बार घुस गए तो फिर आप उसी में रह गए। एंड as luck would have it, I think people more capable than me have either quit, or in my case, most of my batchmates who actually went to the institute with me have become digital editors. तो मेरा 20 साल बाद शुरू जब हमने किया था, तब शायद उस मैच्योरिटी तक अब हम सब पहुंच गए 20 साल में कि हम डिजिटल के एडिटर्स हैं, क्योंकि मेरे सारे बैचमेट इस देश के ज्यादातर न्यूज रूम के डिजिटल एडिटर है। तो मुझे लगा कि पूरे उस बैच में ही कुछ ऐसा रहा होगा, या ऐसा किसी का यूरेका मोमेंट सबको एक ही साथ आया होगा कि हम डिजिटल में कुछ करें। तो वही वैसा ही रहा, एंड होपफुली दिस डिजिटल, एंड वंस आई स्विच टू डिजिटल 10 years ago, I have never looked back. I have never felt the need to go back to television or try my hand at anything else.
Thank you, sir. And now it's over to Ramesh, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's a totally interactive session, and you put the various things which is related from the digital media from the beginning to end, and what kind of the up and downs in digital media, and what is the need, and what kind of the future career in digital media you share to the various question and answers, sir. And as well as the Achilendra Katiyar sir told that you have some important session now just after this session, so you want to conclude the things. So on behalf of the Parul University, on behalf of the Parul University management, and on behalf of the Parul University president, sir, vice chancellor and registrar, so we thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, and like to us as well as our students and faculty member and all the participants, those are the connected with us from different part of the country. And we want to see you again and again on PU webinar platform, as well as we want to see you physically in our university and interact with our student and faculty members. So again, thank you very much, sir. And also thank you to our PU webinar team. They are organized this kind of the wonderful program without any kind of the technical glitches. And we continuously organize the webinar through PU webinar platform. And at least we organize around more than 80 webinars in last 7 to 8 months, sir, on media and the psychology, history, political science, and various other domains, sir. And I also thankful to our all the faculty members. They work day night for the promotion of this kind of the webinar, and they also motivate to the students participate in the webinar, and they also give this kind of the webinar in assignment to our student, and they learn a lot of the things from the eminent speaker like you, sir. So again, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. You spend your time and give your inputs on today's webinar topic. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone. Please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Again, thank you so much. Thank you.